This is the Sony HT-A7000, and it has been the daily driver in my bedroom home theater setup since it came out. And before we get started, I want to make it clear that this is the review for the Sony HT-A7000 as just a single soundbar solution. I will be putting up a separate review of the Sony HT-A7000 as a complete surround sound system with surround speakers and subwoofers, so subscribe and hit the bell notification so you won't miss it. As far as soundbars go, there are a myriad of options that fit a wide spectrum of budgets and form factors that you can choose from to fulfill your home theater acoustic needs. Sony's A7000 falls both on the pricier and more capable end of that spectrum. Is it worth it at that pricier price point as a single soundbar solution? Let's find out. Now, the Sony HT-A7000 occupies the upper echelon of the soundbar market, which is now clearly split into two different camps. The first camp has the soundbar as the main component of a multi-component system with separate surround and subwoofer speakers. These all-in-one systems tend to mimic a full home theater setup, usually with a smaller footprint and lower price points compared to their heftier big brothers. The second camp relies solely on the soundbar itself to provide all the directionality and low frequency capabilities of those individual components. This particular setup typically gets relegated to areas with smaller, more constrained spaces, or for those who don't want the hassle of running a complex multi-component system. Now, this A7000 straddles both camps by allowing you the flexibility to keep it as a single unit system or expand via the addition of surround sound speakers and or a discrete subwoofer. With the unit alone coming in at retail at $1,299, although it is cheaper now with Black Friday deals, upgrading to the available surround sound speakers and then upgrading further to either one of the compatible subwoofer options priced at $400 and $600 respectively, prices the multi-component alternative of this A7000 around the $2,000 range on the lower end and close to $2,500 if you opt for the higher tier accompaniments. Now, put a pin in those numbers because they're going to play a big part later on when I run through my thoughts on the HT-A7000. As you can see, this thing is wide, coming in at 51 inches wide, 3¼ inches tall, and about 5½ inches deep, while weighing in a shade under 20 pounds. So this is a hefty boy. So be cognizant of its weighty dimensions when you're simply placing it underneath your televisions. In certain TV models that don't have tall enough stands, the height of the A7000 will occlude the bottom of your screen. This is more optimally sized for screens that are wall mounted or have enough clearance underneath the lower part of the screen. In either placement scenario, you have to give enough room to allow for the upward firing speakers the ability to do their job and send those signals unobstructed up to the ceiling to get its full effect. So be aware of that as well. The A7000 speaker array is composed of 5 front-firing speakers, 2 front-facing wide diaphragm subwoofers, 2 side-firing beam tweeters, and 2 upward-firing speakers, designed to maximize verticality and voluminosity. In terms of design aesthetic, this A7000 definitely strays into the blocky, monolithic cube territory. Sony itself has coined this design concept as an omnidirectional block. I'm not sure if they're doing themselves any favors with that type of naming convention, but regardless, the materials here are premium, to be sure, from the fabric that enrobes the upward firing drivers to the perforated metal grille. Now be aware that this onyx black glass that encases the top of this unit is 100% sure to be a tractor beam for every fingerprint in your household if you tend to utilize the capacitive buttons for power, input, volume, Bluetooth, and etc. on this device itself instead of using the remote. Now, this entire design language screams utilitarian black box, which isn't quite my favorite of all the soundbar motifs out there. This design language can even be traced down to the A7000 remote, which has a decidedly 90s home theater component feel, festooned with blocky buttons. Again, the remote is extremely utilitarian, providing easy access to the A7000's key features and functions, but you'd be hard-pressed to differentiate this remote if you time traveled to a 1990s era The Wiz and walked into its home theater showroom. And for those that don't know, you're too young for this channel. Now, one of the cool aspects that I enjoyed about the design in the A7000 is the ability to display through its front grille pertinent information regarding the settings, like the current audio source, the volume level, and whether the vertical speakers are active. On the rear of the unit, you'll find a trove of feature-rich connections that keep pace with the most cutting edge of home theater technologies, while allowing for backwards compatibility if your TV doesn't quite play well with all of that bleeding edge tech. There are 2 count them, 2 full HDMI 2.1 inputs, which feature full 4K at 120 Hz, which will satisfy your current gen gaming console needs. There's 8K 60 Hz if you're looking to find all that creamy 8K content floating out there on the interwebs, as well as Dolby Vision HDR. Now, one caveat, and it's a potentially crippling omission for Xbox Series X owners out there, is that this A7000 does not currently support pass-through for variable refresh rates or auto low latency. So buyer beware if your primary purpose is gaming with the current generation Xbox console. Now, the conspiracy theorist in me tends to think that Sony, owners of the rival PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro console, did this on purpose, but it's a calculus that doesn't make sense in the long run. But regardless, I digress. Alongside these inputs are an optical input, a USB Type-A connection, a 3.5mm analog input for Sony's proprietary acoustic center sync, which allows certain Bravia televisions to leverage their speakers as the center channel. There's also an HDMI/eARC output, and finally the power outlet. Now, one quick note about a quirky feature. If you are able to utilize the eARC connection to your TV, for some reason, the optical input is rendered useless and cannot be utilized to add another input source like a CD player or a vinyl record player or what have you. Again, this is a baffling decision given the premium nature of the A7000. Also, be warned that outputting via the optical Toslink port will eliminate your ability to output more advanced audio signals such as Atmos or DTS. Now, one small concern given the bounty of connection options on the rear is that it is quite snug back here. This shouldn't be a huge issue if you're not accessing the rear ports frequently, but it could be if you're the type that changes up your setup often enough for this to be a hassle. In terms of setup, the HT-A7000's process is simple and intuitive through your television. The helpful on-screen guide walks you through the placement and calibration process, connecting to your preferred streaming platforms such as Spotify Connect, Apple AirPlay, and Google Chromecast was painless, and integrating to your home automation assistant of choice was all done within a matter of minutes. With Sony fully supporting all 3 major home automation platforms, you can incorporate it easily in every multi-room scenario you have set up. Alongside the typical device setup options is the Sony Companion Music Center app for Android and iOS, which allows you yet another interface to control the HT-A7000. One strange, baffling omission for Sony's flagship soundbar, however, is an equalizer that can independently manage bass, treble, or mid-range. What you get in its stead are cinema, music, or standard DSP sound modes. Again, for such a steep price point, not having the ability to tweak the exact sound signature specifications to your individual tastes is a huge miss for me. Now, what it does lack in tweakability, however, the A7000 makes up for with its immersive audio enhancement function. Through the remote, you can enable the IAE functionality, which immediately upscales a 2-channel sound profile to a full-blown 3D soundstage as if it were mastered from a 7.1.2 source. It leans a little heavy-handedly on the process side for my own taste, but the effect nonetheless is impressive and enveloping. The HT-A7000 accomplishes this through both its speaker placement and its proprietary vertical sound engine that processes audio signals and upmixes stereo content to utilize the upward firing channels to accentuate the height of the sound. Personally, it worked great for more movie-oriented content rather than music, as the verticality introduced during musical tracks, for me, really took away from the distinctiveness of the soundstage as it was meant to represent, often resulting in a more, what I would consider distant mix than I was a fan of. Again, for movies, this added spatial component is great at articulating sound positioning, but it just doesn't add as much to music tracks, and quite honestly, detracts from them. So beware when enabling for your music listening sessions. The A7000 also possesses the ability to tailor its sound signature relative to your space through its sound field optimization process, which mimics functionality in other high-end receivers and soundbars by playing noises that capture the travel of sound in your environment back to the device. This allows the A7000 to calibrate its settings to more optimally leverage the space you're listening in by adjusting factors such as how wide and how tall it should disperse the sound. Now, more discerning listeners can still take matters into their own hands and dial in the optimization directly. Utilizing this technology in conjunction with your reference level Dolby Atmos content of choice, which for me, as always, is any of Denis Villeneuve's Dune movies, really allows the A7000 to flex its muscles. The attack on Arrakis and the attack on the Spice Miners is an absolutely sublime example of how far single soundbar digital processing technology has come. There was both a distinctness and a sense of scale to everything that was occurring on the screen, especially for the vertical aspects of the soundscape. Movement across the soundstage was sharp, and there was a level of accuracy to the positioning that can only be brought forward by the width of a unit this size. However, as awe-inspiring as the soundstage was, and as broad of a sense of depth as it brought to the table, what I found lacking in the HT-A7000 was truly deep in your chest bass response. And for me, for a device at this price point, this lack of low-end depth is, quite frankly, almost unforgivable. There is simply no getting around it. You must buy a companion subwoofer for this unit to truly unpack its full potential. And truth be told, you'll probably have to shell out for the more robust SW5 unit, check out my review here, to keep pace with what the A7000 is bringing to the dance. On the positive side, the dialogue from this A7000 was clear and tight, and in the scene where Paul was conversing with the Bene Gesserit, the A7000 really demonstrated its range and presence by going from the more nuanced prayer whispers of Lady Jessica to the boomy reverb of the Mother Superior's voice. The range exemplified by the A7000 in these moments really makes you gawk at how far our DSP technologies have truly come. Music, on the other hand, falls a little flat for me on the A7000. Tracks feel constrained and somewhat tinny and grating, especially on the higher end. This certainly isn't an audiophile listening device, in my opinion. And again, I'm not sure if this has to do with the placement of the speakers within the unit, the enclosure itself, or with the way the HT-A7000 processes stereo mixes, but boy, was I disappointed given what I just kind of listened to from a movie content perspective. Invoking the IE functionality certainly expands the soundstage, sure, but the effects add distance without adding heft and body to the sound, and I feel like part of that is that missing low frequency component, so it just ends up feeling far sounding for distance's sake. In hoping for a better outing on 360 audio, I also took the HT-A7000 out for a spin on a slew of 360-degree audio tracks on Tidal. One of the first things you'll learn delving into the available 360-degree audio catalogs is that some tracks take full advantage of this capability, while others seemingly only slap the 360 designation on their tracks. In that sense, it was hard to gauge where the A7000 was falling short and where the track itself isn't living up to the 360-degree potential. Regardless, I found a majority of live performance tracks mastered with 360 audio actually sprung to life with the A7000, although I had a sense that my own discrete 7-channel setup would do way more to make the 360-degree environment more apparent and distinct. So I guess all in all, the A7000 did a decent job employing 360 audio, but it's not, in its current single soundbar format, the best possible way for you to enjoy it. Once you reach this pricing echelon, comparisons start centering around the laundry list of capabilities that these soundbars bring to the table and whether or not they can provide these capabilities on their own, or if they need to include other speakers into the mix. Go slightly north of the A7000 sticker price, and you can basically package the worthwhile and now cheaper Sonos Arc along with a Sonos sub for a little less than $1,400. Go a smidge further at around the $1,900 price point, and you can get a fully packaged Klipsch 1200 system, which nets you surround speakers and a sub. Go even further around the $2,400 mark, and you can get yourself the excellent standalone Ambio, if you want it to stay single sourced. In the other direction, you could go with more value options like the Sonos Beam Gen 2, the brand new Sonos Ray, and the number of good LG and Samsung options. Now, the reason I'm going through all of these comparisons is that the standalone HT-A7000 at $1,300 retail, and again, it's cheaper now because of the Black Friday deals, just doesn't quite justify itself. There are better value options if your sole goal is to just have a single soundbar setup for your movie watching and music listening needs. However, as a centerpiece component of a multi-component system with added surrounds and a separate subwoofer, it makes total and complete sense. But at that point, you're minimally in for around $2,000 with the lower priced RS3 surrounds and maybe the SW3. And if you truly want the absolute best Sony has to offer in terms of component surround speakers, you would probably opt for the RS5s and the SW5 subwoofer, which is honestly where I think you should be leaning. And now you're kind of teetering in the $2,500 range. But again, if you were to package this today, closer to Black Friday, you'll probably get better deals on it. I'll be posting a comparison review of those particular options But in that case, as the core of a multi-component system, the HT-A7000 is absolutely integral, and dare I say, might be one of the most feature-packed component systems in the marketplace today. Sony knew this was their flagship soundbar, and they ostensibly threw the entire kitchen sink at it from a features and functionality standpoint. However, I do think they made a tactical strategic error by not selling this as a bundle out of the gate. It performs really well as a single soundbar solution, but does it do well enough to justify its current price tag all by its lonesome? Especially now that you can get the Sonos Arc Ultra around $200 to $300 cheaper? For me personally, that answer is no. Now, caveat, if you're in the market for a full component system and you are willing to get into that next strata of pricing by combining the compatible surround sound speakers and the subwoofer, the excellent one, the SW5, into this mix, like some kind of blocky all black Voltron, then the A7000 is a feature-rich soundbar capable of powering all of your next generation components without leaving you wanting for the foreseeable future. So if you found this review helpful in any way, hit that like button or hit dislike if you're a hater, and check out my other videos here and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my content. I'll check you next time. Peace.